Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and I was always told out of Voice Radio. So today, we're going to be looking at the best Porygon card ever. Now, to be fair, it's also the only good Porygon card ever. Porygon is not a Pokemon that has been blessed with good cards over the years, but there was one card released in Japan that was legitimately a really, really good card and is now like hideously expensive, but hey ho, you can't have everything. Now, it was actually a Pokemon fan club promo, and the only way to get this was to be a member of the fan club and collect points between April 2000 and December 2002, and then you would redeem those points for cards. Now, there were actually 3 cards available. There was a Shining Magikarp that was released in the UK. There was an Eevee, which was released outside of Japan with different artwork. And there was this Porygon, which never got released outside of Japan. Now, this has actually, because it was good and because it was never released outside of Japan, and because even in Japan it was very difficult and awkward to get a copy of it, this has become a very expensive card. Now, the lovely Antoine Boulay has been feeding me information about this particular card, though Jason Klaczynski did write a good article which included a bunch of information a while ago. I'll pop a link to that article in the description. And Antoine says that the last 2 sales of this card on Yahoo Auctions, the Japanese equivalent of eBay, happened earlier this year, and they were for, well, the equivalent of £240 or $317, and then £444 or $589. Put simply, this is a very, very expensive card. Now, it's actually got 2 attacks, and the first attack here, all clear, Bulbapedia brings us our translations here. Essentially, all Pokemon powers stop working during this attack. You discard all trainer cards in play, and you remove any special conditions, and remove any markers and counters except damage counters from any Pokemon. Now, this is actually really, really good for a number of reasons. It would remove pesky stadiums, so nowadays you'd be able to get rid of something like a Parallel City, for instance. And it gets rid of Pokemon tools, so something like a Choice Band, for instance, would completely go away using this attack. It's for one colourless energy, it's kind of useful. Although back in the day it was used more for Focus Band and Goldberry. Now, Focus Band basically said if it was attached to a Pokemon that would be knocked out, flip a coin. If head, it's not knocked out but you get 10 HP instead. Then discard Focus Band. Kind of like a Focus Sash, but you had to go through the whole coin flip malarkey, but you could attach it to any Pokemon. And Goldberry said that at any time between turns, if there are at least 4 damage counters on the Pokemon Goldberry is attached to, you can remove 4 of them and discard Goldberry. At the start of each turn, if there are at least 4 damage counters on the Pokemon it's attached to, remove 4 of them and discard Goldberry. It's just kind of a nice healing card. You get rid of them with Porygon, but it wasn't really the first attack we were excited about. It was the second attack that we were excited about. Conversion 2. Choose a type other than colourless and one of your opponent's Pokemon. Put a colouring counter on that Pokemon. That Pokemon is now the type that you choose, and you can only have one colouring counter at a time. Basically, you can change a Pokemon's type. The thing is, it stays, so they can get in and out of the active and do whatever they like for as long as it's on the field. They keep that colouring counter. And there were some beautiful things you could do here. Now, there's some boring things like giving yourself resistance. So this Porygon had resistance to Psychic, so you could make a Pokemon Psychic type so you had resistance. That's kind of the boring way of using this card. But it opened up some truly wonderful game-winning plays. One of the best involved Neogenesis Murkrow. Now, Neogenesis Murkrow had 2 really nice attacks. The first attack allowed you to essentially trap a Pokemon in the active, but it was better than your average. So if you look at something more recent like a Gabite, for instance, then they're stuck in the active, but you've got to use this every single turn, or then they can retreat. The great thing about Murkrow was that Mean Look trapped him in the active, for as long as Murkrow remained your active Pokemon. Which means you didn't have to use this turn after turn. Now, if Murkrow or the other Pokemon went to the bench, then that means that the whole thing would reset. So essentially here, there were two ways to get around this. Either you played Switch, or you played Gust of Wind. Gust of Wind was basically an old school Pokemon catcher in that it didn't require a coin flip, it was just an easy gusting effect. You just dragged them active. So if you were to drag the Murkrow player's Pokemon off the bench, then you would then be able to retreat. While you had them stuck in the active, you could then use Feint Attack, which just 2 energy sniped for 20 damage. Sounds like fun. But what you would do is before you started rolling with Murkrow, you would use Porygon to make one of your opponent's Pokemon Psychic type, and you would make sure that that Pokemon couldn't hit for more than 30 damage. Bearing in mind we're in the early days of the game here, a lot of Pokemon couldn't do more than 30 damage. Then Murkrow would have resistance, so you would then play your Gust of Wind to grab that Pokemon in the active, and they wouldn't be able to do more than 30 damage, but they'd be Psychic type, so Murkrow would have resistance, so they just wouldn't be able to damage Murkrow, and you could sit there for the rest of the game sniping for 20 damage, and it would be impossible for your opponent to do any damage. Now, if they played a Switch or a Gust of Wind, that would ruin it, but otherwise, you just locked them in the active, and off you went. Now, you could use this as a 2-card tech, just when you, because everyone was playing Gust of Wind anyway, you just go, oh, they've played a Pokemon that can't do more than 30, let's convert it to Psychic with Porygon, then grab it active and use Murkrow to win the game. Or you could use it as a wider strategy using something like Dark Vileplume and a Hay Fever Pokepower, think, ability, which said that no trainer cards can be played. It's Vileplume, of course it's item lock. Back then trainers mean what item means now. Sounds like a lot of fun to me. But there were some other uses for it as well. For instance, Base Set Chansey. Base Set Chansey was a very good card that did quite a lot of damage. It did 80 damage, which at the time was a lot, but you also did 80 damage to yourself, but that's fine. You had more than 80 HP. And then what you would do is you would use Porygon to make Chansey into a fighting type. And then when Chansey hit itself, all of a sudden it's weak and it actually gets KO'd by its own self-damage. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Lots of fun to be had. There were, many things you could do with Porygon, but one of the other really fun things you could do is use the old Special Darkness or Special Metal. Now, these were slightly more restrictive than later Special Darkness and Special Metal Energy. The Special Darkness Energy said that when it's attached, you do an extra 10 damage. However, you put 1 damage counter on the Pokemon Darkness Energy is attached to, unless it's a Darkness type. So what you would do is take the Pokemon that had Darkness Energy attached, make it a type other than Darkness, and every turn it would take 10 damage. Start of every turn. Or end of every turn. And then a similar thing with Special Metal. It meant that damage done to the Pokemon with it attached was reduced by 10, but if it was attached to a non-metal Pokemon, whenever it does damage, that damage is reduced by 10. So you take a Pokemon with the Special Metal attached, you make it a type other than metal, and then all of its attacks do 10 less damage, or 20 less if there's multiple metal energy attached to them. Same thing with Darkness Energy. If they've got 3 Darkness Energy attached, they're taking 3 damage counters between turns. This was absolutely wonderful. Now, there was a promo Smeargle, which did a very similar thing, but did it on a coin flip. It's just not as good, ladies and gentlemen. It just didn't have that same level of awesomeness because it just never keep up. It couldn't do the same things because you had to hit a coin flip. There are people in Japan that are running around at the moment trying to find a copy of this $300 plus card just to use it in unofficial tournaments because this combo with Murkrow was so much fun. Porygon's not had a good ride of it in the Pokemon trading card game. I mean, take base set Porygon for instance. Base set Porygon has conversion, and you can change the typing of your opponent's active, but all you can really do there is either give yourself a resistance, which actually is the other attack, or just make it so you can hit them for weakness and get an easier KO. It didn't open up the fun plays. Unfortunately, Porygon's had a fairly rough deal in the Pokemon TCG. But this Porygon was great. Yeah, it only ever saw release in Japan and all that, but I'll tell you what, ladies and gentlemen, I love it, and you should too. But I want to hear from you guys. Did you know about this Porygon? Did you come across it before? Have you heard of anyone that's got one? Have you got one? Let me know all of this in the comment section. Go nuts. Be nice. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at the Wassy, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all of that, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do just that. But by far the most important thing, as always, is to look after yourselves until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.